Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our KPMG Military Internship Programme. We are joined by Lesley Gold and Sid Welham. I'm going to pass over to Sid and Lesley now.
Good afternoon, evening, all. So, as it says on the slide, Sid Welham. I did approximately 18 years in the Army with the Royal Welsh and got out just over 6 years ago. Didn't really have a clear view of where I was going when I got out, got to that point where I knew that I was leaving the forces. But a lot of guys I'd served alongside and friends outside the military were working in some form of financial services, so I had reasonable connections and networks across that. So as you're advised to, I reached out to that network, conducted pretty broad recce initially, and then started honing down the areas that I was particularly interested in, and I was fortunate to be offered a role as a direct hire into KPMG. And since then, in those 6 years, I think I'm now in my fifth different role, either by design, by myself moving around, or operating model changes within the firm. So I now find myself effectively the Chief Operating Officer for our financial services practice, and enjoying all that comes with that. I just introduced Lesley, or Lesley can introduce herself, who works with me on the internship program.
Hi, yeah, I'm Lesley. So I started out my career actually working in a recruitment agency, recruiting for finance professionals across commerce and industry. And after 5 years and heading up a desk of my own there, decided it was time to move into the Big Four, and now I'm managing our recruitment function for audit professionals. That's my day job. And on the side, I help Sid out with recruiting for our military internship program as well.
So just the next sort of 5 to 10 minutes, just talk through what the KPMG military internship program is, and give you a bit of an insight on that. We'll then, I think, pose, as is the way of these webinars, we'll pose you a bunch of questions which hopefully will prompt some discussion, and some questions you can ask in the manner that you do for this webinar. I got to KPMG, as I said, approximately 6 years ago, and occasionally used to bump into sort of lost souls who, through a identification process of relatively short hair and swinging their arms a bit too much when they walk down the corridors, I'd worked out with they were ex-military. And we didn't really have a network of ex-military people within KPMG at the time. So about 4 years ago, we formed an ex-military network, started with about 30 or 40 people. We're now about 120 people in the business, primarily ex-military, but some reservists who, how they do it, I don't quite know, work some hours at KPMG and then find some time to go and do their reserve service. So after we'd sort of got the network established, having gone through the process of transition and attended some very good insight days at the likes of Deloitte and JP Morgan and what have you, I realized that we were missing a trick in KPMG and not tapping into the rich stream of talent that comes out of the forces in a manner that our clients and our competitors were doing. So I managed to tap up some of the leadership to get a bit of seed funding, and we initiated the program. So it's been going probably just under 3 years, and we've managed to get 30 interns through the program to date, which, I think I'd like to see greater volumes, and I'll come on to why that's been the case. And I think there is potential for greater volumes and a greater run rate coming into the firm going forward, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. When I set up the internship, or when we set up the internship, rather, when we set up the internship, we had a look around at what everybody else was offering, and I think we worked on a couple of principles. There's a bit of a cliched saying, and I don't know quite where it comes from, but I quite like it, despite the fact it's a bit cheesy, is that it's veterans, not victims. So I definitely didn't want it to be seen by the firm as charity work. And I looked around, and there were a couple of, and I'm not detracting from anybody's internship program or look at insight program or anything like that. But I was quite keen that the firm got some value out of it, and also the individual got some value out of it. So that drove it to be in a 6-month paid fixed term contract. The rationale behind that would be that if you come to, if you were to come onto the program and you left at the end of the program, you don't have to call it internship. You've been contracting at KPMG for 6 months, so I think that's a worthwhile amount of time that you can demonstrate you've got something, some value add on your CV at one of the big four. So as a worst case scenario, that's what I thought the individual could walk away from the experience with. And then on the firm, and clearly whilst they were there, they'd be paid. And from the firm's perspective, I was quite keen there was 6 months, because from my perspective, that well, it certainly took me about 2 or 3 months to work out which way I was up on transition into the firm, and it's quite a different environment, although there are lots of parallels, but it's quite a different environment. So it does take you a little bit of time to orientate yourself. So, but 6 months allows you to get bedded in and then be given a bit of work, a tangible piece of work, and really deliver some value in that 6 months, which you can, as an individual, the individual can feel, up for and fulfilled for doing it. It's something you can point to. As I said, if you do walk away at the end of the internship, you could point towards a reasonable body of work that you've done within KPMG. So I was trying to go for that win-win for the business and win for the individual. So that's what's driven it to be a 6-month paid fixed-term contract. To sell it into the firm, I had to provide personal assurance and that we would deliver the top sort of quarter, top third type candidates coming out of the military. So we do go through a sort of vetting process, and we've got individuals from all 3 services within the network who I can turn to. Clearly, I can read an army CV pretty well, but those that come from the dark and light blue are a bit more of a mystery to me. So I sort of offload those onto those of that cloth, who can give a bit of a steer as to whether the person is of the quality we're looking for. You have to remember that coming into KPMG, similarly to the other big four and lots of other institutions, they basically take high-end graduates with good quality degrees from some of the better universities. So to reassure the business that we would bring the right sort of people in, we are looking very much for the top sort of third and top quarter. Where our internship differs to others, I think, is the way that it's basically on a demand-led basis. So we don't have an intake of 5 or 10, so pitch up on 1st of January and another intake of 5 or 10 on the 1st of July, and the business be signed up to one bit of the business taking 1 or 2 of those individuals. What we do is we use the network we have, the ex-military network, and everybody's aware of the internship program. We keep our eyes and ears out to look and identify roles we think would be suitable to individuals leaving the forces, and then those people report back, and we go and speak to the hiring manager or the sponsoring partner for that role and do a bit of a sales pitch on that individual that they ought to look at, a military, an ex-military or a service leaver for that role. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to fit a roundish peg into a roundish hole, and that sort of leads on to the next bit. Whilst the internship is absolutely 6 months and 6 months only, and there's no obligation by either party beyond that, we have had a 100% conversion rate from the program into permanent roles thus far, which is extremely pleasing, and clearly, is one of the reasons that that we try to get the program up and running. We, those that have served recognise the talent that is coming out of the forces. There's a bit of a convincing act to be done on the business, because they just don't have visibility and exposure to what military candidates can offer. But it's a very cost-effective way of the firm hiring really top quality candidates. So the approach over the last sort of 3 years has been, create some success. So walk before we run. But all the employee networks, of which the military network is one of them, all have sponsoring partners, and we've just had a new sponsoring partner come in who is particularly supportive of the internship program and and providing opportunities from talent coming out of the military. And he and I have been going around to every member of the executive and explaining what the program is all about. And we've had hugely supportive conversations. So I do think the demand from the business potentially could be stepping up quite significantly in the next, in the forthcoming sort of months. So I do think, and I personally want to see that 30 turn into 50 quite quickly. There is a little bit about landing in each bit of the business, one successful candidate. I don't think there's any point in trying to overload business units with 3s and 4s. I want to have a relative degree of confidence that we land somebody, they do really well and set the tone, and then we sort of exploit in there after we've got one good hand in up front. So basically, that's the long and the short of the program.
So we shall move to our first poll. Oh no, we've got a question in. Is the internship across or limited to your 4 main sectors?
We're about to come on to that.
Preempting the questions. Well done. We'll come on to the question next, because I'd be interested to see what people's perspectives are on that. So we will answer that question. So let's move on to the questions. So I think this is fingers on your buzzers, because we're quite interested on your view. I'm an ex-infantry, so I wouldn't have a clue how we'd be doing this, but if you've worked it out, please do give your view.
Yeah, we'd like to know where you think we mainly recruit our military interns, into which areas of KPMG. So would that be within audit, tax, consulting, advisory, or central services? So that would be the internal facing roles like your finance functions or HR, etc.
And in the meanwhile, we've got a question saying, is the program open to all ranks?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I'm very keen. So it is open to all ranks, but I'll be very transparent, is that to date, it's predominantly been ex-direct entry officers. There's no intent that it ought to be just that. It's in part that the business quite often will look for a first degree. But again, because the business is part signing up to the fact that they're going to accept to look at a military intern as an alternative to their sort of usual, the experience that will come through on the CV, if it's particularly suitable, will counterweigh that. So we have had, we've certainly got a number of late entry officers who've come on the course. I'm trying to think of any senior NCOs. To date, no, but I'd be extremely keen to. When we have opened up, something that's just happened quite recently is we've been liaising with, I think it's Amazon. Is it the Restart program that Amazon runs?
Yeah. Which
is a sort of IT boot camp or a technical boot camp. And I think we've just taken an ex-Lance Corporal Royal Signals off of that, and he's come into work in our web-based services team. And what we're finding in the general market is that some of the tech graduates aren't, I'm trying to be not too politically incorrect here, but aren't quite as robust as we need them to be. So they're awesome technical people, but you potentially wouldn't want to put all of them in front of clients. So we need people who can stand on their 2 feet, brief and what have you, but are also very technically minded. So we sort of got that stream, and I think that really opens it up to hopefully having a much broader, or taking from a broader candidate pool. So absolutely, the program is absolutely, and I'm really keen that it just isn't just directed entry officer sport. I really am, and I'm really committed to that.
Okay, and we'll close the poll there. And most of you believe that consulting is the main area of business. Lesley, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, we're quite happy that you said that, because we did predict you would all think that consulting would be the main area. We actually posed a bit of a trick question there, because we do bring military interns into every function of KPMG. Consulting being probably the area that you would think you would come into the most, but we have to remember places like audit, whilst you may not have the audit qualifications, do require project managers, same as tax. Central services, again, a lot of project management roles come up for HR, transformation projects, etc. So as Sid mentioned earlier on, it's very much a demand-led program that we run, and we will earmark specific roles that we hear about within the organisation that we think may suit somebody with a military background.
Yeah, so I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with ex-combat, so if I talk about the military, the army rather, of ex-combat arm officers who come in going, right, I'm going to be in management consulting, and I'm going to do transformation, or I'm going to do people and change and what have you, and that's absolutely fine. And absolutely, people should have an intent and an aspiration. And I mean this in the most respectful manner, but until I got to KPMG, I didn't have a clue about the breadth of opportunity that was on offer at KPMG, because I just don't think you do, unless you're particularly well informed, and I certainly wasn't. I just don't think you know what opportunities exist in which parts of the business, and I'm still 6 years in discovering roles that I wasn't aware of. So my strong advice would be, if you come to our internship program, or anyone, just approach it with an open mind, and what you do find is, once you're inside the wire of a firm like KPMG, there is huge amount of internal mobility. So my suggestion would be, if you have an opportunity on, say, our program or a program like it, don't get too exercised around where you initially land. I think get in through the door, demonstrate the value that you can add, and very quickly, you'll have the opportunity to move around quite a bit. I can well remember the face of the ex-One Para Special Forces Support Group company commander when I told him I had an opportunity for him in audit, which he then duly took, extended beyond that, because it was a PM role building a specific team within audit. And he's actually, although that team has moved to our risk consulting business, he's now transitioned onto client work in that space and doing very well. So I think the point I'm trying to make is, don't come to these sort of programs with too much preconceived about where you go. Yes, clearly, if you've got a driving urge to do something, maintain that. But I'd just say use, internships such as ours as your springboard from the military into a firm such as KPMG, which offers so much opportunity, but internally, both nationally, and then there's your massive opportunity for international travel as well, and that's strongly encouraged. As when we started off, quite a lot of people landed in internal roles, because the business wanted to just weigh off the risk a little bit, because if you don't have consulting experience, the confidence putting you straight in front of clients is a bit of a risk for us. But as the program's gone on, we have been delivering people more into immediately client-facing roles, and yet again, they're doing extremely well. So, the bit about it is just remain open-minded, I think, is my key message on that one.
Okay, that leads us on to our next poll. The greatest demand for military internships at KPMG is within which regional office? And now I'm going to close the poll, and surprisingly, everyone thinks 81% in London.
0 for the Midlands.
Yeah, yeah, people got a downer on the Brummies, clearly. I suppose, to date, that has been quite accurate, I suppose, in that I think it's a bit of a default that, KPMG have got about 15,000 people in the UK, and I think probably 6,000 to 7,000 work out of the sort of London offices. The critical mass of the military network does at the moment sit within London, so we've been better able to leverage the business and the firm within London, although we are putting people into our engagement teams that work into Abbey Wood and at other locations down that part of the world with the MOD and adjacent clients. And we have got a number of people in Manchester, a number of people. We haven't really cracked Scotland, but we are reaching out to the regional chair of Scotland for there, and she's quite keen to look at military CVs. So to date, it has been London. And when I say London, though, I'll come on to the second bit about the intelligent working policy. Is you may be based out of London, but that doesn't necessarily mean we do an awful lot of people work from home quite a bit. If you're out at client site, you might not see the office for weeks on end because you're working at a client site. So, Lesley, anything to sort of add on that?
No, it's mainly just around the intelligent working. We do have a lot of people commuting into London, so maybe working Tuesday through to Thursday in the London office. Also working from multiple offices. So we have a lot of London regional offices. So, Watford, Cambridge, for example, and they may find that they'll work a couple of days from the Cambridge office, come into London a couple of days a week. But like Sid mentioned, that there's very much an element of flexibility that needs to be offered from you as well, because if you are out on client site, we cannot guarantee exactly where that will be. So there could be some travel involved. Wherever possible, there will be the intelligent working policy put in place for you to make it a little bit easier.
Okay, shall we move on to our next poll?
I think so. What information do you think is most important to include on your CV when applying to KPMG?
So we have a question here saying, what level do you bring people at? Manager or anything above or below that?
Right. So we started the program bringing people in at manager level, but recently we've been challenged a little bit around that. Certain of our clients, and you'll be keen to hear that one of the ones who's most particular about this is the MOD. If they don't see six, so when we go to pitch for a job engagement, the client will often want to see the sort of bios of the team we're proposing to put up. And I'm pretty sure that's the same for most of the Big Four. And certain clients, if they don't see 6 years of commercial consulting experience, they won't pay for a manager grade. So and the client that's most particular about this is the MOD. So you can, if you're serving, that's a bit of reassurance, I guess. So what we've done with our MOD team at the moment, they've come on board as assistant managers, but the sponsoring partner at the same pay level, and the sponsoring partner is committed to getting them stepped up as soon as he can demonstrate to the client the value the individual can have, and he's already got somebody through that process. So we feel that manager's the best grade because you clearly come to the firm, as we all did, with some commercial gaps. You don't understand risk management, as I didn't, in a commercial context. We all bounce around saying we do risk management daily, but it's not within the commercial context that firms like the Big Four operate. So manager, I think, is about the right level, and anybody that's sort of at major, senior captain, or other service equivalents, that for me that feels about right. If you were to come in as a senior manager and go client side, you'd be exposing yourself and the firm to a degree of risk given based on inexperience. What I'm keen to do is bring people in who are set up for success, and there's a little bit about investment early to go slow. Go slow early to go quicker faster, if that makes any sort of sense.
Okay, and we're going to close the poll and share our results with you.
Right, go on then, Lesley.
Right. Again, there's multiple answers to this question, but the main point I really wanted to make is achievements are key. You may feel that the skill sets that you have are not completely relevant to the role that you're applying for because you haven't done it before. But what you have got are achievements, and those achievements can be applied to really any role. And wherever possible, those achievements should be demonstrated through tangible statistics, numbers to demonstrate exactly what you have achieved. What we don't want to be seeing on CVs are daily duties. We don't want a job description of what you applied for when you applied for the role, but what you have achieved in that position. Technological skill sets, I think, are a tricky one because it kind of comes back to one of the questions earlier about demonstrating what specific experience you've got in terms of technological know-how, maybe financial services background, etc. I wouldn't get too hung up on those and worry about them too much. It's really about trying to demonstrate the transferable skills that you bring to the role. And absolutely limit acronyms. None of you said to include those, so I think it's probably been drilled into enough. But probably one of the first people to read your CV is going to be somebody like me in the recruitment team, and I don't have a military background, so you need to be thinking about putting what you've done into layman's terms for somebody to understand really the value that you've added.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. To the point about tangibles, if you manage the budget, you've made cost savings, you've managed numbers of troops, you've create efficiencies, it's that sort of thing, because that's the sort of world that if you come to something like KPMG, whether you're client facing or you're internal, that's the sort of people need to understand that you have had some exposure to that sort of thing. They don't expect it in the format that we do it on a daily basis, because what you get through internship program, and I'm sure it's the same for other Big Four and other institutions, is you get a relatively soft landing interview. So we've done a bit of a sales pitch to the interviewer, So they understand there are gaps, and what we tell people who are coming forward to interviews to say, look, if there's a gap, just be honest and open about it, and just say, but what you can point towards is the ability from anybody who's served in the military to just, we've all been there. You're doing one job, playing soldiers one day, you're then in a staff role the next day to, doing something else, So it's that ability to flick and just bring your core skill set to bear and do that. And what I'd say when you talk about key achievements, try and write it in a dynamic sense as to, I've done this, so therefore I can bring this to your firm. So it's all about helping the interviewer understand what you're going to bring to the firm. I mean, I'll use incorrect language here, but when people say, what do these military people really do bring? And I say that, the USP, the base level is the ability to get shit done. And that is, that's very crass and that's very base. But it is fundamentally what people do value, the people coming out of the internship program for. They can pick up a problem, they can go and speak to the right people, they can pull a team together, they can break the problem down, get the team motivated, and then deliver the outcome, which is what most of us do have done for our military careers.
And another key thing to include is your ability to liaise with a vast a large variety of stakeholders. Within KPMG, you'll be exposed to partners on a daily basis. If you're on client site, you'll be speaking to CEOs, COOs, etc. So that's another skill set that you bring, being able to speak to people in a much more senior ranking to you, and actually liaise with them quite easily on a daily basis.
Okay, speaking of other tangibles, do you think there are any qualifications that these guys should be doing?
The one. So there's obviously there's a whole bunch depending on which route you're coming out and how long you've served. There are a number of things, but I think it still remains reasonably current. Now, I'm a bit wary of saying this. I know people charging off spending their resettlement, but we have got quite a few roles coming up. Well, we think we've got a bunch of roles coming up in the project management space. So having Prince 2 is still quite reasonably current. You can still, Prince 2, APMP, Lean, Sigma 6, management risk, APMP, all that sort of stuff is positive. It also demonstrates, I think, to any business you're trying to go towards that that you are, you're making the efforts to bridge that transition, and you're investing your time and effort into making, bringing your experiences and putting them into a qualification in a format that the commercial world understands.
Okay, I think we'll move on to our next poll. So, what are your main concerns about transitioning into the commercial world? And in the meantime, someone has asked, is there much scope for international travel, either during the internship or when undertaking a permanent role?
So during the internship, I think it rather depends on what role you've gone into. If you're sort of in an internal facing role, so doing a bit of internal project management, probably less so. But in terms of, and I suppose, again, it rather depends if you were to go permanent or had a permanent role in the firm. It depends on what that role is. There's so sort of more formally longer term, there's the ability to go on secondment internationally. So we've got, KPMG's a global network of offices in all major countries around the world. Well, no, pretty much in all countries around the world, really. So there's a huge amount, and the same with the other big four. So everything I'm saying for KPMG is pretty much the same for the other big four as well. From what I know from friends and what have you. But if you're particularly interested in international travel, that is appealing to the firm as well, because a lot of people aren't. So that can set you aside. Also if you're prepared to travel to certain countries where others might not be, which are more austere, should we say? Again, that potentially could be act in your favour, I guess.
Okay, and I'll close the poll and share the results. It seems that learning technical skill sets required in the new role are one of the main concerns.
Interesting. Look, I think this is going to be something that you'll face no matter which company you go into, and actually people even joining new companies from non-military backgrounds are going to worry about. What we have to remember is at KPMG, there are numerous training courses set up. I mean, we have a whole learning and development function, and every day there are new courses being added to the L&D website. So there'll be no shortage of courses for you to join. There is the reason for this being a 6-month fixed term contract is there is an understanding that we're bringing people in from a military background who may not have certain skill sets, hence the initial embedding period of 6 months to enable you to get up to speed. Wherever possible, there are people from the forces in the firm network on hand to assist, to help out, to talk you through as, I guess, a little bit of a mentor or buddy, anything that they may have done when they joined to help them get set up. But feedback from those that have joined from the military internship program is not around, I don't feel like I've picked up the technical skills fast enough. It's not really an issue that people tend to face.
So I'm sorry, I'm smiling at the irony of the fact that we've told you not to use acronyms and we've put an unexplained acronym on there. So you see so FITF stands for, it's the cheesy name that we've given the network. It's the forces in the firm, which is the network. So basically what that says is anybody that comes in on the internship program, we give them a forces in the firm buddy for the duration of their program. So that just helps them bed in, and is the sort of person that, you know, the purpose of that individual, the buddy, is to ask them the sort of bone questions that you might not want to expose yourself by asking your new team. So people have met with a buddy once or twice in the whole 6 months, or they met with them every week to buy them coffee and ask them questions. And so there's a huge amount of support. So the firm naturally supports every one of its employees. So there is a huge number of either online courses, stuff you can do in the evening. There's a huge scope for improving yourself. But you know, I've been with the firm 6 years. I've done limited training. It's amazing how transferable a lot of the skills that we have used in the military can be applied out in the civilian sector. So I certainly wouldn't get hooked up on that. You know, it's not the expectation that people will come through the program and then go back to the start of being an auditing accounting graduate and do a full accounting qualification, albeit we do have an ex-RAO in the business who has gone and done just that, which is quite a punchy call on her part. And she's gone through the whole 3 years of being an accounting graduate. So we don't see people being auditors with an account unless you happen to have one from your time in the military, which I've not run across anybody with that yet. And I certainly would be surprised to find anybody with technical tax qualifications. So it is more likely that longer term you are going to sort of find your way probably in the consulting space or the deal advisory space, which is, you know, deals are very exciting. Mergers, acquisitions, restructuring, all that sort of thing. Transactions, people going into strategy. But I would point towards the fact that, you know, I can happily wave the flag that we've had 30-ish interns come through the door, and every one of those has been judged to be the right sort of caliber and have the potential to be successful in the business to the extent that they've all made permanent hires. Woe betide the individual who fails to meet that bar, but going forward. No, and, you know, we've got people have made the jump who've come in. So given it's only been running 3 years, but we've had people come in on the program who came in as managers and have made the step up now to senior manager. After, you know, somebody probably after about 2 years. So, you know, it demonstrates to me that, you know, we aren't lacking. There is plenty of opportunity for service leaders at firms like KPMG. I absolutely believe that.
Just to touch on understanding what your career path will look like, this is something that is obviously going to change for the individual and will completely depend on the area of the business that you're brought into, whether you decide after those 6 months to stay within that area of the business or move internally into another area of the business. But open and honest conversations happen very, very regularly at KPMG with people questioning where their career is going, looking at ways of progressing their career. And it's not something that's specific to the military interns. It happens with every single employee that you're going to want to understand where your career is headed. So my response to that is to continuously have those open conversations and talk about where you want your career to go.
So my take on this is, unlike, and I'm sorry for any dark blue or light blue brethren on the call, but I can only relate back to my time. It's not like Glasgow. You have to drive. It's not like when you get your postings from Glasgow. You just have to drive it that much harder, and the opportunities exist there. So you can't expect things to come to you, but people are very much more open about having conversations about where am I going next? Right, I want to achieve this. What do I have to do to demonstrate that I'm at this level? So your progression is very much in your lap going forward. So how hard do you want to drive it? And like in every walk of life, a bit of politics plays its part. Be in the right place, the right time, associating yourself with somebody who's a senior who's going places, who will drag you along with you. All of those things sort of help. But I've seen people move from coming out of the military as warrant officers to being a director in a Big Four in the space of about 6 years. So if that's not going some, please tell me what is. So that's top effort. Right. So hopefully we've given you a bit. So just a bit of summation. We've given you a bit of an insight into what the KPMG internship is all about. What the opportunities, the range of opportunities that exist at KPMG, and I'm sure it's the same for other firms. So I'm not particularly want to make this about KPMG. I can't really speak on behalf of other firms, but my exposure to those firms is they all offer these sort of opportunities. And hopefully we've given you a bit of a steer on the CVs. We're working with the OA. We will look to try and do an OA CV workshop at some point in coming months. So keep an eye out for that. And we'll pull in some of the recruitment team down at KPMG, but also some of the ex-military there to try and help anybody that wants to come along for a bit of a CV, a bit of an interview workshop, or just general advice on taking things forward. There's been a plethora of questions, and I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of those. But I appreciate you putting the questions in. I apologise that we can't run through there seem to be a whole bunch.
Yeah. I think one of the main questions is, how do people apply to the internship? When's the best time to apply, especially if they're looking at a couple of months of leaving?
Right. So it's been a bit of the flip side of not running set intakes is that it's a bit of a timing issue. So there's a timing issue between trying to find the opportunity and then finding somebody who's the right point. For our purposes, if you're interested in the internship, I'd start thinking about engaging 5-4 months before you are able to be free of military service, because it probably takes a bit of a while to get your CV. So the way that we would operate is that we see a CV, it comes in often through personal recommendation of someone in the network, or we've had some through the OA or the CTP. I or a couple of other trusted individuals would do a first screening on the CV, and we will qualify whether we think the individual is top quartile, top third. If we like the look of the individuals, we'll bring them in for a sort of face fit. So qualities there in the CV. We also need to make sure the individual would sort of fit with KPMG. It is a sort of particular sort of organisation. It's not the right place for everyone. And then once we've got a confidence in the candidate, we then would stick them forward to for an interview with the hiring manager, the recruiter, the sponsoring partner. We have had people hired off the back of the first interview, or taken into the internship, bring them off the back of one interview with the business unit. We then have other cases where there's been 2 or 3 interviews, but it's relatively quick once we put people in there. Any further out, we're happy to give offer advice and what have you. But anybody further out than 6 months, that's not we don't see the opportunities that far out. So very happy. I did spot one question that didn't pop up from, I think somebody said, I'm a warrant officer doing an MBA degree with a whole string of Lean Sigma 6 stuff. Would that be eligible? Yes, it would. By all means, ping a CV in if you're in that time frame. We're very happy to consider you.
Yeah, time for another question. How do military leavers best get around their relative lack of civilian experience?
I think you've got to just be honest about what you are. I think most guys come out, most individuals come out of the military with some great experience. I just think about if you don't have experience in a certain area, I think you just stick your hands up and go, look, I haven't been in that area. But you think about what you have done that's maybe adjacent to it or similar to it. you give that as an example, but you also stress the fact that you know, the variety of roles that you've had in the military, and you jump around so much. So you know, most military people are expected to change roles and get up to speed and deliver quality in very short order, and that's the sort of thing I think interviewers want to hear. You know, there's, you know, even in, so as I say, I go back to the fact that KPMG, I've had 5 roles in 6 years. They haven't all been the same. They've been, some of them been a bit different. So, you know, it's not that dissimilar out in the commercial world. I think we've thrown up a slide with a whole bunch of contact points. There's the KPMG careers website. So another thing, we do help people who are applying directly. So don't think the internship's the only way you get into KPMG or any of the big 4. You know, you can clearly apply directly, but we also, if people do that and they flag themselves up to us, we do also try and help them by getting hold of the respective recruiter and saying, look, we know somebody's applying, you know, don't just sift their CV out because it looks a bit different, you know, get the CV to interview stage, and you know, we're confident the individual will probably hold their own, if not better. And Lesley's very kindly,
what I would say is my email address is there, and absolutely ping me questions, which I'll just send on to Sid. What does help is if you are interested in joining KPMG, just having a look at the KPMG careers website and seeing what roles are on there, and if any are particularly of interest to you, because it just helps us try and understand where may be best for us to start pushing your CV into the business.
Two things on that I would say is, just I go back to my piece about, particularly for the internship, be open-minded. We don't try and place anybody in a role we think they'll struggle in. We try and place people into roles that are successful. The success of the program to date and the patronage it gets within the business is predicated on us delivering good quality candidates who are a success. So we're not going to put people into roles we don't think they can do. So there's a little bit of faith has to be shown on both sides. And then once you're inside, then you can, you know, then there's the opportunity to network around and go where you want to go. The other bit is, Lesley said, go and look at the jobs page, but also if you're coming to someone like KPMG, there is anticipation or an expectation that you will have researched the firm and have a bit of an idea about what we do. It is a bit galling when people are giving up their time and having to work later in the evenings to meet people who haven't bothered their backside to do a bit of research. You know, and you're pretty much, well, from my perspective, if people haven't bothered, they're asked to do that, then I write them off as candidates because they're just, you're not putting the groundwork in.
Okay, that just leaves me to thank Sid and Lesley for their time. All slide deck will be available to you. Also, this will be on YouTube. And if you have any other questions, do contact Lesley Gold. Her email address is leslie.gold@kpmg.com.
.co.uk.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a good evening.